Chapter 1. Crossover. The post-rain Qingqun village emitted a slight chill of late autumn.
Ku Jiao, sweating profusely, chased after someone to the village entrance. Young Master Xiaoqin splat.
She slipped, falling face first onto the ground with a thud. The horse-drawn carriage in front of her sped away, splattering her face with mud.
Ha ha ha. The surrounding crowd burst into laughter. In their village, Ku Jiao was a laughingstock, for her husband was a cripple and yet she disregarded her dutiful husband and always chased after young Master Xiaoqin from the town. Who was young Master Xiaoqin anyway? His father held an impressive rank. Himself was a scholar and undeniably handsome. Would he even spare a glance at a woman used like an old shoe?
A toe tree into it a swan's flesh. Exactly.
She should look in the mirror.
As if young Master Xiaoqin would answer her. Old, used shoe.
Ugly monster. Fool. Ku Jiao fumed at the insults. With hands on her hips, she retorted fiercely. None of you are allowed to insult me. A child jumped out. What if we do?
Fool, fool, fool. Ugly monster. Ugly monster. Ugly monster.
With rage tinted with humiliation, Ku Jiao lunged at the child, but stumbled, falling into the water, at the cold lake bed. A woman who had seemingly lost consciousness, sudden lie opened her eyes.
What happened?
Wasn't she in a plane crash on a mission, with everyone killed when the plane struck an iceberg? How did she end up falling into water? Ku Jiao tried desperately to swim to shore. Perhaps due to her fall, she felt like she was drained of all strength. By the time she managed to drag herself ashore, she felt ready to pass out, obtaining no more entertainment seeing Ku Jiao sinking. The villagers initially planned to fish her out with poles, but she surfaced on her own. The crowd scanned looks before dispersing with a whoosh. Ku Jiao, confused about the entire situation, saw a group of strangely dressed people scatter and flee.
She lay on the cold ground, wiping the water droplets from her face. Suddenly, she froze. She looked incredulously at her own hands. They were the hands of a 14 or 15-year-old girl. She was 28, so why did she have such small hands?
Moreover, being a queen of grooming in the special agent world, she took good care of her skin.
But these hands were covered in chilblains, and some parts were even cracked.
Elvi had her hands changed, her silhouette, and
soon, Ku Jiao realized that not even her clothes differed greatly from before. Bold speculation flashed through Ku Jiao's mind.
She leant over the water, wanting to see her current appearance, but almost fell back into the water from shock.
What was all this splash of colors?
Ku Jiao took some water and scrubbed away the cheap rouge from her face. But things took a turn for the worse. Her face was yellow and skinny, and there was a large red blotch extending from her left cheek to the corner of her eyes. In her past life, even getting a tiny pimple had Ku Jiao stressed for 3 days. Now, facing a face that could easily win the title of the era's most hideous, she felt like dying on the spot. Speaking of which, where am I? And what time period is this? As she spoke, her head throbbed with pain, and a wave of memories that didn't belong to her suddenly flooded her mind. It turns out she had transmigrated to a dynasty that didn't exist in history.
Their village was called Qingqun Village, located at the foot of Oinqun Mountain.
The person she was supposed to be was also named Ku Jiao, the only child of the third family of the Gu clan. Old Master Gu was a scholar when he was young, having passed the imperial examination as a child.
He became the Lijing of Qingqun Village, and had been one for many years.
Qingqun Village was poor, and being Lijing wasn't lucrative, but at least they were not starving.
The old master had 3 sons and a married daughter. The eldest son, Gu Chenghai, had a son and a daughter with the Zhou
family. The second son, Gu Changlu, had 2 sons with Yao family.
The first 2 branches of the family were thriving, but when it came to the third branch, it was as if they were cursed and could not have children.
Finally, Ku Jiao was born, but she was a girl, ugly and naturally dim-witted. In the words of the villagers, she was a last-making product. No, she was sound wanted that they'd have to pay people to take her. Since Ku Jiao's birth, there had been no more offspring in that branch of the family. Gradually, rumors began to spread around the village, saying Ku Jiao was unlucky, thus driving out the fortune of having sons in the third family.
At first, the Gu family didn't take it seriously, until Ku Jiao's parents died one after the other, and they were convinced that this child was indeed marked by misfortune.
The Gu family tried to marry Ku Jiao off, leveraging on their connections.
But who would dare to marry her? As luck would have it, one day, Gu Zhao found a man who had fainted from hunger at the entrance of the village and took him home.
As Gu Zhao processed the memories in her brain, she walked towards a dilapidated thatched cottage to the west of the village.
That was the home she lived in now. He's halfway through. A sharp pain emanated from the back of her head. Gu Zhao touched it and her hand came away bloody.
She must have hit a rock underwater earlier, causing a head wound. The bleeding was significant. She needed to stop it as soon as possible.
As she thought about it, Gu Zhao entered her home's courtyard. The Kalingit courtyard was quite a stretch. It was just a small open space surrounded by a fence.
The small thatched cottage, apart from the main part, only had 2 rooms. The slightly larger room on the east side was Gu Zhao's, and this room was even smaller than the walk-in closet she had in her previous life. Such a sorry state of transmigration. Feeling a bit melancholic, Gu Zhao pushed open the door and walked in.
The moment she crossed the threshold, however, she felt someone else's presence inside.
From the rhythm of their breath, it was a man. The man hid behind the door, holding his breath.
A cold smile emerged on Gu Zhao's lips as she casually entered the house. In unison with the sound of the door closing, her hand reached out and grasped the man behind the door, throwing him onto the ground. The man's body was larger than she had expected.
If she were in her previous life, no matter how big the man was, she would not be afraid.
Unfortunately, with her current frail body, she had to use every ounce of strength, pressing her entire body weight on him to hold him down. With one hand, she took off her hairband and tied up the man's wrists. Her other hand clenched around his neck as she coldly asked, "Who are you?"
"What are you doing in my house?" The man was taken aback, and then a wave of indignation washed over him. "Gu Zhao, have you gone mad? It's me." Someone she knew.
So it was an inside job.
That made it even more despicable.
Instead of letting the man go, Gu Zhao applied more pressure, further restraining the man.
"You, get off me." The man gritted his teeth, his tone cold. HMPH, Gu Zhao sneered. In her past life, everyone danced to her tune, and nobody ordered her around. This was her house, and she hadn't even interrogated him about sneaking around. Gu Zhao raised her fist, intending to teach him a lesson.
But her elbow accidentally bumped open the window behind her.
The bright light streamed in, falling on the man's refined and handsome face. Gu Zhao's eyes widened in shock.